Hi, everyone. Welcome to Module 4 of Macroeconomics. So, in Module number 4, we're pretty deep into the world of economics as a whole. And so, we're going to continue to learn more when we talk about what macroeconomics is and more in chapters 5 and 6. So, in Chapter 5, this is Introduction to Macroeconomics, which it's a little weird because we're so many weeks in at this point, so many modules in, but it's even more information that's going to help us along the way. So what we'll be learning about in Chapter 5 is the national economy. So we'll be learning more about what the economy is and what activities actually go into the economy. It focuses on total economic activity. It considers all the aggregates that are involved with the economy, as well as individuals and businesses. We'll learn about how the economy is influenced by fiscal and monetary policies to achieve goals like growth and stability and more employment for people, and how it's interconnected with the global economy through things like trade, investment, financial markets. It's a lot of information. And it's really going to dive deep into looking at how the human body and the U.S. economy work together, right? And how we influence it, it influences us. And we'll learn about things like the GDP, the gross domestic product. We'll learn about unemployment. We'll learn about inflation, right? And how those things are very similar to the analogy I would say is the actual human body, and how those things are the heart rate, the blood pressure, all those things impact and really, really influence how the economy is doing as a whole. And so we'll talk about what the role of knowledge is in the economy and how knowledge about macroeconomics and other different disciplines improves decision making and provides more accurate information. And how it fuels technological advances, leading to improved efficiency and improved economic performance, which leads into higher productivity. And higher productivity leads to better outputs, leads to a better living standards, which means that if we're more productive and we are more efficient, we are living a lot better, right? Things have gotten better, and you could argue that the technology and systems today are better than those 15 years ago. We're also going to talk about economic fluctuations, right? And how a short-term movement in the economy, such as booms or recessions, are indicative of what's to come forward. And they help us make decisions as business leaders about what the demand may look like tomorrow. If there's an economic boom today, if we decide, you know what, we're in an economic boom, everything's going really great, how's that going to impact demand? How's that going to impact supply? Are there going to be any fiscal government-related policies created to help us in these situations? Or if we're in a recession, how's that going to impact demand? It's probably going to go down, right? If we're all having a hard time paying our bills at the end of the month, we're likely not going to be going out and spending money on a brand new iPhone when the one we have right now is pretty good, right? And so we'll also look, again, I've mentioned it before in a previous module, we'll look at global events and how the global economies around the world impact our economy. So we could be doing great over here, but let's say in Australia, for example, or Germany, or England, or China, or India, or any country out there, if their economy tanks for whatever reason, right? It could be changes in leadership, it could be policies, it could be procedures that they've done, whatever, national disasters, that is going to impact us in the United States here, right? Even if it's in Australia, it may very likely impact us in the United States, positively or negatively, depending on what the situation is. Like I said, we're going to look at things like gross domestic product, also known as GDP, which measures the total value of goods and services produced in a country. We're going to look at the unemployment rate and how that indicates the percent of labor force that is unemployed and actively seeking work. We're going to look at inflation rate, which measures the rate at which the general levels of prices of goods and services are rising or falling. Typically, it's only rising, though, and very likely it's rising as you're watching this video. We'll also look at the consumer price index, retail stores, and the stock market performance, and how all of that information impacts the economy. We'll look at aggregate demand and aggregate supply, which is aggregate data for demand, supply and demand. We're going to look at aggregate data for outputs and prices, and the aggregate demand and supply curve. And we're also going to look at Chapter 6, which is all about tracking the U.S. economy. Right? So we're going to look at production of a nation, right, which is the total output of goods and services produced within a country, within the GDP of that country. It encompasses all of those economic activities. We're also going to look at national income accounts, right? So this is a system recording and tracking income, production, expenditures, all that stuff. It'll be an overview of that. We're also going to look at how can you calculate out the GDP, the gross domestic product, because we need to look at things like consumption, investment, government spending, our net exports, and we'll look at the formula for that and what those specific components entail. We're also going to look at circular flow of income and expenditure, right? This illustrates the continuous movement of money and goods and services between households and firms. Like I said back in Module 1, we're going to look at how money goes from us to the business all the way back to us. And it's this cycle. All of your money is not going to this business and staying there. It's eventually coming back to us in one way or another. And so it's this one big cycle. And one cannot exist without the other. We're also going to look at national market transactions, right, and how those impact the economy. We're going to look at adjusting for inflation with some consumer price indexes, or indices, if you want to pronounce it that way. And that's everything that we're going to talk about in module number 4. So make sure you're doing your discussions, make sure you're doing your assignments, and I will see you in the next module. Thank you, everyone.